Good everyone, welcome to another vlog. In this vlog I am going to be kicking off with something from last week, which is the barley. I ran into quite a few challenges with the barley. As you can see in this little zoom, this is from a render. This was an initial test of replacing the actual physical barley with one of those group planes, but this one took way too long. It looked great. It looks great. As you can see, it looks great, but it took forever. This one took 31 minutes, which is the look I was going for. I'm really satisfied with the look, but the problem is 31 minutes per frame, and that's excluding characters, is yikes. It's just not practical. There's an acceleration structure in Blender called Octree. Now, this one was rendered with Octree enabled at a resolution of 128, and it only took 12 minutes. So look at the difference. I'm going to flip between the two. Sorry, that's the one right there. You can see there's a slight flickering. I'm going to zoom in on this part for the in the editing. But you can see that there's a slight flickering between the two, and I think that's because of the pre-calculation that it does. This one was the first Octree test, and what I did was I disabled the shadows as well. In the description you'll find a link to the video, the website with the optimizations for Blender Render, if that's what you use. And that gets you down to 12 minutes. But the problem is Octree is not consistent. It doubles the amount of memory that you need for your scene, at least. That's what I've seen this week. And it does not work for scenes that only have some detail to it. For example, I tried this on the palace throne room scene, and yikes. It actually made it a lot slower. At the moment, it renders at approximately, let's say 30 minutes. Not 30 minutes, 30 seconds. Goodness, maybe I should sleep more. It renders at about 30 seconds, and when I turned Octree on for it, it took a lot longer. I didn't even let it finish. It was just ridiculous. So if you do decide to use it, I'm going to show you exactly where it is by showing you this project. It's really something to look into when you're doing fields or stuff like that, stuff that really has a lot of detail. But yeah, it can be something that can really knock your render times and not improve them. So this is the project. Just going to turn on screen gas keys. Not as really needed, but whatever. As you can see, this is what the planes look like. Now, in order to get this look, I had to add more of the same to the plane. So if you were to look at the actual material, there you go. You can see that I have two textures applied and two normal influences, and of course a color which is just a cloud texture. So if I were to turn off one of these, that's the texture. Not very fancy, but it does the job. It really, really does a great job. I tried going denser than this, but I'll show you that as well. Okay, so if you wanted to use Octree, you would find it under Performance in your render settings. It's this acceleration structure. Normally it's set to auto, but as you can see, there's Octree, there's VBVH, SIMD, SVBH, and SIMD QBVH. Ooh, try saying those fast. So Octree has a few options. One of the things that the website, I think it's the Blender Wiki, says to do whenever you try to speed up a ray tracing scene is to up the resolution for your Octree. Now, as far as I know, upping the resolution divides the screen into smaller segments for the computer to pre-calculate so that it renders faster. It's almost like it's not a GPU boost, but it almost responds like one. It's weird. It's a very, very cool feature if you have a ton of memory. Now, my PC does not have a ton of memory. It has a substantial amount. It has about 10 gigs. But the scene from Esther 6, you know, Susa, when the camera goes from Haman's face and, you know, goes from the sky downward and you see the city and the people and all that kind of stuff. That scene alone is about 4.3, 4.4. So if I try to turn on Octree, even just on 64, it crashes. No questions asked. It just crashes. So just a heads up, if you want to use Octree, make sure that your computer has a lot of memory. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And of course, turning off shadows and all that kind of stuff as far as possible will also speed up render times. But this is a very, very cool thing. I would encourage you to check out the other ones to see what their features are. I still want to check them out to see if there's a way to boost it, you know. But no, this is interesting. Very, very interesting week. So I just want to show you some of the textures. I tried using the physical models of the barley in this scene, but the physical details just... the computer can't even show it, let alone render it. Seriously. I mean, one stalk is over 1,000 vertices, which I mentioned in the previous video. Now, this is also a very dense texture, which I tried using. The result isn't horrible, but I tried using this one with billboard textures. Not billboard textures, billboard particles. Now, the billboard particles, they do look good at certain angles, but if your sun shines a certain way, it kind of creates that stage look, you know, when they have fake water on stage, at least in the cartoons. It's just these little cartwheel waves, and you can see them moving back and forth in different layers. It's that sort of suggestion. It doesn't look that awesome. I'm going to show you what it looks like now. You see what I mean with that layered look? You can also see a lot of flashing in the grass. And it's also not supposed to look like grass. It's supposed to look like soft, fuzzy looking fields. Now, this is not horrible, but it just doesn't serve the purpose. Plus, its render time was also a bit of an issue. So this one was just stopped. Seriously, it was just stopped. This layered look over here is just not attractive to me. I didn't like it. Really did not. Now, as most of you know, I use in Blender a method for leaves on trees that's pretty much just intersecting planes. The reason I do that is because it reduces the amount of render time. I can't have super high geometry and render it only on PC. If you go for render farms and you can afford that, that's great. But it's just not practical for me. So what I do is I try to get the geometry as low as possible, showing as much detail as possible. Pretty much the same approach you would follow for games. So I think it was last week or the week before, I saw a video showing off a Softimage plugin for adjusting normals. And I really do believe this was orchestrated, because it was really useful for these kinds of trees as well. This is the tree without normals edited, and this is the tree with normals edited. As you can see, it has a lot more even lighting, especially from the top. You can see that the light is coming from this way. Now, if you look at the tree alone, you can tell that. Unlike with this one, which is sort of confused. You can tell that it's coming from the top, but you're not quite sure because of these little, for lack of a better term, blank spots on the tree. So this is a lot better. Now, this will definitely come in handy for getting closer to that painterly background kind of feel. It's just a matter of getting the leaves right, getting the density right, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do this. Okay, now this is the project for the tree. As you can see, it looks kind of weird. And no, this is not where the leaves are applied. This is the leaves' normal shape. So if I were to turn this only to wire, you can see that it's almost like I cling filmed the tree, which is pretty much how you approach this. So if I were to render this that you see right now, you will get a lot of dead spots because I did not go all the way into these areas and create places to catch light. So if you want exceptional results, I recommend using like little bubbles or whatever to fill up the tree to get that full lighting. I just wanted to test this out, so this is what we're using. In order to get the result that you saw, I just scaled it along the z-axis, going like 0.1 so that it's nice and flat. You can see that it creates a nice sensitive top over here, and it receives light especially from the top. But this also gives a good result, so I'm going to show you what this looks like first. As you can see, there's a few areas over here that shows a little bit of light, and that's like I told you guys, if you want all these dead spots to be removed and light to show where it's supposed to show, you're going to have to put a little bit more effort into wrapping your tree. And then remember, it has to be a single shape. This doesn't work with groups. This is the normal modifier, normal edit modifier. Okay, so without it, okay, so look at the difference. Absolutely massive. One is a lot more stable than the other. So what I totally do recommend is that you give this a shot. It's really not difficult. All you need to do is just set it to radial, select your shape, and have at it. Well, in addition to the barley, I also got to work on some other plant life this week, specifically the Nile's plant life, which includes the lily pads and, of course, the water lilies themselves. Now, this one I was still trying to work on getting the pads not to intersect, but as you can see, that is near impossible. Even with a different method, it's still not that great. I'm using, what's it called, the grid for particles, and I'm just making it a little bit more random. That decreases the intersections, but in order to decrease it even further, I made some of them stick out a little bit above the water surface, and some of them would obviously sink a little bit below the water surface and that sort of thing, just to prevent these weird intersections, because placing them manually is just too much geometry. These are very low poly, as you can tell, but just sticking them manually is not an option. It's really not an option. Oh, these reeds are just a particle system with, it's a hair particle system. There we go. But it's not using strands, it's using the physical geometry so that it has good reflections and cast shadows, etc. Because you can see the light shining into the water over there. Now, this was pretty much the first capture of the water lily while I was working on it. I used the array modifier, link in the description on how to twist the array modifier. Very, very cool way to model something like this. All procedural textures, of course, as usual. And this was it pretty much finished. This was before I added the green leaves and stem at the bottom. I just added some water to, stick it in a scene. And this was the render from last night, including the pads and the reeds. The reeds are here in the background. They're very dark, so I don't know if you can really tell. So the reeds are over here, the pads are here, and obviously the lily is over there. And that's pretty much it for this week. Hopefully this coming week will be a lot more productive, but this was very cool. Have a great one, and God bless you.